We're so thankful that each of you have chosen to be with us today. You know, when you look at this, the crowd this morning from this vantage point, it's a wonderful sight to see. And it's even more beautiful when you hear the singing. For you ladies, you sure make us men sound pretty good. But you can always tell when the ladies kick in. It's just a beautiful melody throughout the congregation. We're so grateful for that and thankful to you. And by the way, each of you are invited to come back next Sunday, and then the next Sunday, we'd love to see this crowd. Without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Ed. All of you know Ed. Ed Daughrity, my brother, and my brother in Christ.
I appreciate those comments from Isaac and Ricky, but this is not about me, it's about you. I want to spend the next few minutes talking to you about a very important subject of each of us, and that is this wonderful congregation of ours. We want to welcome our visitors, our past members, those who have come to celebrate this great event with us. Not much did we find about the early church prior to 1974, except this document on the screen that was written by Brother Edward Harper. Brother Harper wrote that on April 14th, 1918, the congregation had been meeting in a schoolhouse for some period of time. We believe as early as maybe several years earlier than that. We find here that Brother Harper said he was unable to recall or find original members. Didn't have much record of original members. Some were C.F. Neal, J.K. Harper family. Of course, we remember the Hedgecosts. He mentions them and their family. Sister Hedgecost's father, Andy Williams, assisted this young congregation in many meetings. He also mentions an E.L.M. Elam. So that's about all. We don't find any elders in this list of people. On the second page, you'll find those members that were a member of the church back in 1917, organized by W.H. Wire, W-R-Y-E. On this list of members, I have a little flag there, is Sister Bertha Logue. Sister Logue, I remember very well, her sitting right back there on the back pew of the Church of Chapel Hill at Depot Street. Dot Wilson is her daughter. And when the church was organized, it is said, and we believe this to be true, that the banker told that if 10 women would commit to $10 per week, or $10, I believe it said, to the bank, they would loan the money to build this building. That's the Depot Street building. It is believed to be that Sister Bertha Logue was one of those members. The church occupied this building from 1918 until the first phase of this facility was built in 1978. A co-worker of mine, Isaac alluded to this, studied with Joy and I, and we were baptized in the Depot Street building May of 1956 when I took a job in Huntsville and moved there. Just before we left this congregation, grievous wolves moved into this church and split it, and therefore it caused great pain and embarrassment in our community because of that situation. 10 years later, our company built a plant in Lewisburg, and Joy and I moved back. And as Isaac mentioned, lived in Lewisburg, we worshiped here. I'll have more to say about this later. When we moved back in 1966, Roger Lyons was a minister here. You see Roger. I talked to Roger this past week. His wife is now in England. They had a son that carried her there for a birthday, or was it an anniversary, Joy? Kevin, we got an anniversary coming up pretty soon, so you might consider that. But Roger and his wife Sandra, delightful people. We're going to visit them soon because they've just built that log house they've been talking about for many, many years. During the years following, Brother Edward Harper served this church as minister. Brother Harper was a school teacher and put his heart and soul into the church at Chapel Hill. He and Gladys was the glue that held this church together during hard times. We spent a great deal of time together socially and in the work of the church. They had 4 children. One daughter, Wina, and her husband, Manson, are here today. They had 2 sons that are living, Dan and Larry, and 1 son, Ivy, who is deceased. Ivy served as one of our deacons early on. The church had a turning point in 1974 when we hired Brother Clayton Pepper and his co-worker, Ed Daughrity, to teach us how to grow the church. He brought to us many things from his dynamics in soul winning. He came from the Madison congregation in Nashville. He worked with our North on many youth programs, personal evangelism programs. He established and edited the Personal Evangelism magazine pictured here. He worked with Restoration Radio for more than 10 years and established a Center for Church Growth at Ohio Valley College in Spartanburg, West Virginia, to train young people on how to evangelize. Clayton published a church growth manual. I still have my copy of that. This is absolutely the Bible of personal work. It is something that I have never seen since then, but cherish this copy of this book. When Paul and Silas was released from prison in Acts 16, they went into Thessalonica to preach Christ to the Jews. In chapter 17, it was said of them that these who have turned the world upside down have come here too. Clayton published, through Clayton's expertise in teaching, in soul winning, we virtually turned Chapel Hill upside down with our outreach and growth. The Jewel Miller film strips were used extensively in our personal work program. Before me here is one of the film strip machines that we used and the 5 lessons. And of those, of that material, we would go into homes with a projector, and a screen. Sometimes we use a wall or a sheet to show the film strips on. And here's a list on the board that I found of one of the studies that we had. Some of you may have remembered John Henry Cook and Mabel. They were baptized by using this method. They're on this, the arrow that's pointing to them here. There are others on this list as well that were studied with during those times. Pictured here is my daddy and mother that I baptized March 22nd, 1974, at age 62. We baptized them, Joe and I did, one evening after using these film strip studies. During this time of growth, 3 of my younger brothers and their wives were converted. My sister Linda was converted in 1986. It was not until 2005 that my younger brother Ricky, that spoke a moment ago, and his wife and daughter Karen were baptized. Ricky came out of a denomination where he served as a deacon for more than 20 years. He is now one of our shepherds. 4 of my siblings, and including Joy and I and our families, total 34 members who attend this congregation. And there are 37 who have been converted over the years that attend other churches except some have fallen away. The number of Brother Pepper's influence instilled in us the passion for souls. Many of you that are here today that know people, know those who also conducted these semester studies and converted many people as well. During this time, through study and much prayer, elders were established for the first time in many years. Edward Harper, N.C. Shankle, and myself were appointed to serve as shepherds of this church. This chart before you shows our growth for the first 6 months of 1976. We knocked most every door in Chapel Hill area, had constant Bible studies by many members who were trained by Clayton on how to do personal work Bible studies. We overflowed the small building on Depot Street. We outgrew the parking lot and parked on both sides of the street in front of the building. To get more classroom space, we removed a window on the east side of the building to make a doorway to a large trailer we moved in beside the building to use for classrooms. During this time, the church had grown from 51 members to 170, including our bus riders. I'll have more to say about that in a moment. Here is a stack of cards that most of this came from Brother Harper and his files that I have kept for all these years. But here's a stack of cards of conversions and those that were restored as well in our community during the time 1974 through 1977. Many of these members have gone on to their ward, some to other places, some and their descendants still worship here. When a church has rapid growth, you know as well as I do, we have those that fall away. This was the case of some of these members. One of our contributing factors in our growth and stability was the bus ministry. We brought 2 old school buses, trained our workers, still under the teaching of Clayton on how to win souls through the bus ministry. Pictured here are our members who work with the bus program. Here's shown a group of our bus riders and some of our members. In this congregation around 1977, in front of dozens of children, many of whom were part of the bus ministry, shows the Chapel Hill congregation at that time. Here's a picture of Brother Willie McCord, who I don't believe Willie's here today, I haven't seen him, but I did talk with him and he was going to try to make it. He is, I'll say more about Willie in just a moment. And on the right is my son, Kevin. These captains, Willie and Kevin, were key in making our bus ministry a success. Keep in mind, most of the children who rode the buses, families were not members, so Kevin and Willie and other leaders at that time would call them on Sunday morning, make sure they were up and ready for the bus to pick them up. Willie is now a minister in Columbus, Mississippi. He held a meeting in Chapel Hill this year. Kevin is a minister in Cookeville. One of the bus riders at that time was Donna Turley, who married a gospel preacher. Austin and Carol Smith were converted through their children, being Joy bus riders. Austin serves as an elder for 34 years in this congregation. He and Carol have converted many people through the years with their personal work studies. God only knows what the bus ministry contributed to the growth at this place. In 1976, our church directory shows the names of our bus riders on the right. On one of the route, picking up the kids, the team captains taught lessons. They made charts, posters, and they sang songs during the teaching of the children on the buses. In 1976 and 77, we experienced this major growth we started challenging the church to meet our financial responsibilities in order to be able to meet our building needs. Here you see we are given an estimate of 6% of our means. We challenge the congregation to increase giving to 10%. This chart, I'm sorry you can't see these charts very well, at least I can't back there, shows our giving from 1975 through 77. And then this chart gave the church a guide increased giving, which would amount to 20% increase. As we challenge the church to give, we've been prospered here in 1979. This chart shows that we exceeded our budget by $1,088 per week. The dotted line shows we were over budget by $200 per week. We realized at that time our seating capacity in the current building was going to curtail our further growth, and that we needed a larger facility. In our discussion with the membership during our planning sessions, we set a goal to locate property and build a larger building. Through the generosity of one of our members, Max Todd and his wife, this prime 4 acres of property is where this building is now located. We happen to have Darlene Todd here today, or Darlene Warner here today, and her husband, Bo. Max's son, Dee, and his wife, Carla, are faithful members of this congregation and their children. 23 of the men of the congregation signed a note for $170,000 to borrow money to construct this building. Their names are listed here. Finally, the next major milestone was here. We made a public announcement in the local paper of our plans to build the first phase of this building in 1977. This picture shows the groundbreaking ceremony prior to starting construction. The local newspaper announced the dedication of the building on April the 23rd, 1978. We moved into the new building. Willard Collins, president of David Lipscomb University, was a keynote speaker at that dedication ceremony. Randy Simmons became our minister at that time when we moved into the new facility. He brought us fresh ideas on training the youth. Randy and his wife Diane were newly married and was our first full-time minister for many years. Clayton continued to work with us part-time for a period of time. I cannot, when I reminisce about Randy and Diane, I never will forget. One time Diane got a ticket. She was a very young lady at the time. Got a ticket, and she just began bawling. She just bawled her eyes out, and so they let her go. They didn't give her, she didn't get the ticket. So ladies, if you get a ticket, just commence crying very loudly, and they'll let you go. In 1982, we built the annex to this facility. Pictured here is a dear brother, Wiley Moore. The majority of the funds that built this building came from Wiley Moore's estate. Wiley, in later years, became bedridden because of cancer. His wife had passed away earlier, and he had no children. The church was his family. In the latter stages of cancer, he was in a great deal of pain. We visited him very often, and always on Sunday. And I remember once I was reading Revelations 21:20 to him, which says in part, God will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying, and there shall be no more pain. After the reading, I remember Brother Wiley saying, you mean there will be no more pain in heaven? After his death, N.C. Shankle, myself were executors of his will. Brother Wiley willed everything to the church except his personal house, which he willed to his nephew. We started accumulating the assets, which included more than 50 savings bonds, some stocks and cash, a truck, and his farm. We subdivided the farm and sold lots, and after all was finalized, there was a large sum, as shown here on this document. As far as we know, this is the largest one-time contribution to the church. The amount of the contribution was about $180,000. This plaque that you see here is mounted on the front of the annex. As you go to eat after a while, you'll see it there, in memory of Brother Wiley Moore for his generous contribution to the annex building fund. Following Randy Simmons' tenure as our minister was Ted Brooks, came to worship with us. Following Ted was Roger Leonard. Our next minister was Jim Martin, and he and Teresa are here today. Jim had a PhD and brought us many fresh ideas on his teaching ability. A video of these men and others will be shown after this presentation, and we hope that each of you will stay to see that very important video. Here's a picture of Jim, N.C. Shankle, and Charlotte Anderson picking and singing. We had many good times together, as Christians should. In the year 2000, we hired another young minister. We had been searching for quite some time and toiling through many, many resumes to find the right man to replace Jim Martin. It's hard to follow Jim, by the way. Jim had taken another position as a professor at the university in Florence, Alabama. After this, I called Brother Marlon Conley. We were desperate to find the right person. He had trained many young men to preach the gospel. Brother Martin gave me the name of Stan Butt Jr. I called Stan, and he reluctantly agreed to come and interview with us. At that time, Stan was a young minister in Graymere congregation in Columbia. He served this church for 17 years, the longest of any previous minister. Stan has a brilliant mind and an exceptional knowledge of God's Word. When they moved here, the girls were very small, and we had the pleasure of watching them grow up into beautiful young ladies, just like their mother, Georgia. In 2005, we had what I believe was called the Spark Evangelism Program introduced by Stan. We mapped out a large part of Chapel Hill and knocked over 200 doors on one Saturday. One soul was reached and converted. Some may ask, was one soul worth all that effort? Absolutely. Mark 8:36 tells us in part, what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Sharon came down with cancer sometime later and went on to her reward. Reaching the lost is more difficult now than it was then. You can hardly get your foot in the door to invite someone to study with you. Another great milestone of this church was the hiring of our first-time youth minister, John David Swartz, who came to us with his wife, Amy, on April 10th, 2005. They have 2 children, Abigail and Lane, who were born while they served with us. John David brought much spiritual growth to this church through his ministry of our youth. Many of our young men preach, teach, lead singing, and are ministers at other congregations because of John David's influence. My grandson Samuel Wilson has taken a job as a youth minister in Miami, Florida, through the influence of John David and his education at Freed-Hardeman University. Peyton Pruitt, who has been appointed as our youth minister. Preston Pratt serves as youth minister in Destin, Florida. Barrett Bingham is a youth minister at Plano, Texas. These young men were students of John David, as well as others who were influenced by his teaching. John David worked for this church for 11 years. Now later on you'll see a video of this interview of these young men. We hope that you'll stay for that. In 1984, we had a homecoming celebration with Willard Collins again, who had been our dedication speaker in 1978, when we completed the first phase of this building. A ceremony was held in recognition of our last building payment and note burning at that time. The church continued to grow to the point of outgrowing our seating capacity. After removing 2 large classrooms behind those 2 columns there at the rear of the auditorium, which added another 100 seats to the auditorium. After this, we had no other alternative but to proceed with plans to make an expansion to this facility. A building footprint was made by the elders to expand the building another 300 seats in this wing here, on the north side of the building. And on the north side of the building, we added a wing of classrooms. This gave us a capacity of 500 seats for future growth. There's one thing I failed to mention, by the way, when Stan resigned, we hired an interim minister. Terry Northcutt and his wife Glenda came to work with us. He was a joy and has a brilliant mind as well, and we love them very dearly for their dedication to helping us out during that time. Now, in 2007, the architect had completed the drawings on the building, on the addition, and we started construction. The others gave me the privilege of being the construction manager on this project. This picture shows the north classroom construction. Here showing the south wall of the old auditorium during construction. We shored up that wall here and put that large beam that you see there that supports this entire part of the building. It gives us structural support the auditorium and the new wing of seating. Finally, you see here, we moved into our new addition. Then on September the 21st, 2008, we had a homecoming and dedication and dedicated this building. After Stan's resignation, the Minister Search Committee made a recommendation to the elders to consider Isaac Bourne for the position as minister of this congregation. You heard Isaac speak a moment ago. After some time, an offer was made and he accepted. Isaac is originally from Adams, Tennessee, and is married to a former Brittany Schott of Hinesville, Georgia. Isaac was raised on a family farm. He is a graduate of Frieda Hardeman School of Theology. He holds a Master of Arts in New Testament and a Master of Divinity. Isaac preached at various congregations in Georgia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. His previous work was with the Madison County Church of Christ in Jackson, Tennessee. His wife, Brittany, holds a degree from Frieda Hardeman University and is now an English teacher at Forest. He began his work with this church in July of this year. We're excited about what the future holds for this congregation with the work of Isaac and Brittany. Due to John David's resignation earlier, the search committee began to do its work to replace this position. Their selection was Peyton Pruitt, who, along with his family, are members of this congregation. Peyton has a bachelor's degree in nursing from UT at Chattanooga and accepted his first nursing position at Vanderbilt Medical Center in July 2016. Peyton initially started working with the youth group as a summer intern in 2015 and 2016. He has accepted the position as youth minister with this congregation while working part-time at Vanderbilt Medical Center. We're looking for great things from Peyton and his energy in serving our youth. The church is in very good hands with 4 qualified elders who love this church and the Lord. 7 hard-working deacons who serve this congregation and many qualified teachers. We're also blessed to have Julia Smith as our secretary and Linda Jones and Kitty Brothers who keep the building nice and clean and tidy. Murtis Walls, who is homebound, could not be with us today, but she served this church as secretary for 20 years. She's a delightful lady, and we love her very much. In fact, she graduated with my wife in Lewisburg, Tennessee. Murtis was a member of this church for 33 years. In talking with Tim Wilson, the son of Louise Wilson, we found in the old Bible that she has been a member of the Church of Chapel Hill for 70 years, the most of any member of this congregation. I don't believe I've seen Louise today. Is she here? I don't believe she was able to be here today. She's also homebound. Previous elders who served this church at Chapel Hill are listed here. W.T. Wilson, Edward Harper, A.L. DeMombrum, myself, T.J. Nutt, N.C. Schenkel, Larry Redmond, and Austin Smith. Ministers of this congregation we have sent to the mission field. You see listed here. My son Samuel's among that group. Willie McCord. My son, I mentioned Kevin, and Barrett as well. There will be, later on, you'll see an interview with these young men who are now serving the Lord. I would be remiss by not mentioning the wives of our elders are listed here. I did this because, being an elder myself, I realize the stress that the wife goes through. Sometimes the elders have to make decisions that may not be popular with everyone in the congregation. In cases like this, the wife may be put in a stressful situation. The elders many times have long meetings and have to deal with hard decisions, which causes stress that affects the wife and their family. This person in my life that is pictured here has been a perfect elder's wife. In our 64 years of marriage and serving 40 years as an elder, I have never known her to gossip about anyone, talk about sensitive information she may know about. Many times over the years, she has proofread a document for me when the elders were addressing a sensitive matter, and I would leave the name blank on the copy. Never has she asked me who that person was. Also, while working on this history, Joey spent many hours searching through pictures and documents, which helped me immensely in putting this presentation together. I could not have done it without her, and I love her for it. In closing, a great deal has been said about physical facilities used by the church over the years. But this church is not about buildings. They're blessings from God has given us to assist Him in His work, and we're thankful for them. Rather, the church is made up of godly people like you, and that give your support and dedication to the greatest cause known to man, and that is to tell the message of good news to a dying world. You and those who have gone before, you have made the church what it is today. A great challenge is before us to continue this legacy of our past accomplishments. There's much work to be done here and elsewhere to save souls that are out there lost. And that is the purpose of all that we do. We're thankful for those who have been mentioned here today in our dedication services and their sacrifice that they have made to this stage in history, to this great church. One day there will be another welcoming event when we can reminisce old times, hug each other's neck, and again be together for an eternity. I apologize for the brevity of some of the statements I have made. Due to the time restraint, I only touched on the vast amount of material I've accumulated over 51 years I've been a member of this church. We're thankful for our past members who are here today on this memorial occasion, and those who are visiting from our community. May God bless you for coming. Could we close with a prayer? Our eternal Father, we praise your holy name, Father, and thank you for your greatness and your love for us. And for each person that has come here today to celebrate with us this great event. Father, we're most of all thankful for Christ, who is the center of all of our lives and all that we do. And that's the important thing that we need to remember. We ask you now to bless us, Father, as we continue today to be together, to love one another, and to reminisce over things that we have talked about here. We praise your name, dear God, and again we thank thee for Christ our Lord. His holy name we pray. Amen.